Hello, Build It Right people. I'm John. I know a bunch of the names that are appearing, but there's some of you who I don't, so I'll say hello. I'm a professional coach, and I'd say I spend most of my time now trying to help people to be better at something, something that they care about, something that they're struggling with, something they find difficult, and often helping teams to work better together. Years ago, I used to be a developer, and I came from this this whole world of product teams and building things in an agile way, which is why I think I'm in the development process track with you today. But today we're here to talk about something a little bit softer, a little bit fluffier maybe, which I really enjoy. We're here to give you a little bit of an opportunity to think about how you're taking care of yourself, but also have a little think about how the company or the organization that you work for is encouraging people to do that. How it is giving people permission to look after themselves, how it is giving them encouragement to look after themselves. So that's the kind of plan for today. I think I said before, Hopin is not the most interactive thing in the world, but I'm going to do my absolute best to make you all do things. So fingers crossed that might work. Effectively, you can all opt out of that if you want to, but we're going to try and get you to have a little bit of a think about how you've been looking after yourself, and see if you can identify some things that maybe you could do differently. So that's the plan. So my very, very short invitation to try and get you to wake up and start to think in this way is, it's a pandemic, isn't it? And we've all got all these words floating around in our heads about how it's unprecedented and how it's uncertain and all these things we've heard so many times that every time someone says them, smack. But what I want you to do is, given that particularly in England, where we're now in this second lockdown, I want you to have a little bit of a think about things that you did during the first one, way back however many months ago or however many decades ago, to help you to cope. Things that you drew some benefit from, things that you drew some strength from. And I'm just going to give you a bit of help to do that. Let me just pop this up. Told you I love my my kind of fluffy tools. This is something called values cards, and I adore them. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to pop a link to this in the chat. What I would like everybody to do is have a look, have a glance, don't have to share anything, but look for something that helped you to cope during the last lockdown. Something that was part of your strategy, something that helped you to do something positive. You can either look at the PDF in the chat, or you can just have a look at my screen as I scroll through these a little bit. And I just want you to find one. Some of them are more relevant than others, but something that helped you to do something positive during the first lockdown. And if you're comfortable, if you fancy it, stick which one you've chosen and maybe why in the chat. No pressure. You don't want to. It can just be for you. It's something that helped you to cope and to do better during that first lockdown. I'm just going to go back up to the top and then I'm going to stop sharing this. Yeah. Okay. So my invitation to you is to remember that thing that helped you and to see if you can do some of the same. Can it help you again now that we're in lockdown 2.0? Is that something that's useful to you? So that's my invitation for you. Wonderful. Right. That might have woken some people up. We've got a few people putting stuff in the chat. We'll call that positive. I want to talk about this self-care thing. What I want to do is, I'm just going to pop this back up in a second. It is a very weird phrase. It's a very weird phrase that I probably hadn't heard till a couple of years ago. And I have sometimes struggled to articulate what it means, why it's important, stuff like that. So what I'm going to try and do is explain to you my interpretation of it today. See if that is of use to anybody. See if it makes sense to anybody. I'm going to have one more go at closing my curtains to get this bit of light that's distracting me off me. Yay, that appears to have worked. Wonderful. Okay, so let me pop this up. Excellent. There we go. Okay, what is this self-care thing? Allow me to mix my metaphors, because I'm going to be talking about batteries and charging later. But the one that I've always used to try and help understand it is this idea of a cup. Some people talk about a bucket. And it has a certain level of liquid in it. We have a certain level of energy, however you choose to define that, in our cup. And there are things that take some of that out, that take some of that energy away, that reduce that level. And there are things that fill it up. Things that make it, give us more of that ability to cope. I always think of it as ability to cope with different things that are thrown at us in different contexts. Some things empty the cup, some things fill it up. And I kind of invite you to pick a word here that that resonates most with you. I tend to go with restore. It's about restoring my ability to do things, to get something from them, to enjoy them, to do them well. Replenishing, nurturing, helping to grow, things like that. Depends on you which one you kind of works best for you. But that's the metaphor. And I think it's easy to explain it if we think of different kinds of self-care. And this isn't some like official list of things that are self-care, right? This is me scrolling down some things that I think are kind of different categories almost. And I think physical is the one that's quite easy to understand. I know that if I run slightly more and I drink less wine and I eat less takeaways, exercise and diet, that I'm going to be physically healthier. My well-being in a physical sense is going to be higher. I'm going to be fitter, I'm going to be stronger, I'm going to be healthier. I get that. Now, it doesn't mean that I always do it, but conceptually, I kind of follow it. But there are other kinds of energy, other kinds of self-care that kind of fit into some of this. Really easy one, actually, if you're religious, is to see the idea of spiritual self-care. People who are religious will get something from taking part in certain activities, in certain events, and they'll gain something from that. It doesn't have to be religious, though. Things like meditation, things like mindfulness might fit into that category. Something that you do to restore that kind of spiritual energy. A great one to talk about, sort of as an example, is social self-care. And I know this sounds a bit trite, and this kind of came from a while ago, but we're using social distancing a lot as a word or a phrase, and I always hated it. And back in March or April, I heard someone say it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing, and it is. We all have social needs, but it's different for everybody. And introverts and extroverts, great example. So if you remember back when we used to be able to go to parties, think to yourself how you would feel about going to a party. Now, we might all enjoy it, we might not, but is it something you think you'll be able to, at the end of it, walk away with more energy, feeling refreshed, feeling like you've sort of grown your ability to cope with things? Or would you walk away feeling a bit knackered and feeling really tired and feeling like you need to have some time on your own? Introverts aren't shy people. They're people who it takes energy often to be with most other people. Extroverts, it's like the opposite. Sometimes they feed off the energy of people. I'm an introvert. I'm quite happy to talk to as many people as come along to any conference or any talk that I go to, but it takes something out of me. And I need to replenish myself by having some time on my own. Emotional self-care, great one. Often this is just about acknowledging emotions and actually being free to do that and being able to let them out. Financial healthcare is self-care. It's one I put in there because I've got a number of one-to-one coaching clients who struggle with their finances. And actually there's certain things that they can do that help them to feel more able to cope with some of the difficulties that they have around that. Psychological self-care. Do you see a therapist? Do you see a counsellor? Is it something that you need to be able to do? The one that's almost a slight outlier on there is professional. And this because we're talking a little bit about a workplace here. Professional self-care is really important. What's your job? What kind of level of satisfaction do you get from it? What kind of level of challenge? Are you empowered to do things that you want to do? I often think this is about growth as well. You know, growing into new roles, learning new things, having the right amount of growth in your role and the ability to be able to gain something from that and gain the right levels of satisfaction. It's very tiring when we're in a job that we don't like, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. So I think that's quite a big one. It's something that you can't do on your own. Actually, a lot of these you can't necessarily do on your own. Yeah, that's my kind of vague introduction to what it is. What's important? Well, it's quite obvious that, I say it's obvious to me, that if we don't look after ourselves with burnout, we can suffer from poorer mental well-being. Mental health's a continuum, right? And it's, you know, I think people move around a lot during their lives, possibly during the day. But the level of mental well-being that we have can be severely affected by the level of water in that bucket or that cup. Something that I find gives people a lot of resilience from a self-care point of view is having proper purpose in your work. It kind of plays into that professional self-care. Actually knowing what we're doing and it has some point to it, has some purpose to it. We actually care about it. Can make far more rewarding. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. And I work with several different NHS organisations. Great example of people who work in caring professions, who never look after themselves but always look after others. And this quote from Jack Cornfield is a quote about coaches, and it says, "If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete." I love that. I think that's beautiful because I do this all the time, and I know a hell of a lot of other people who do. Sometimes your purpose can be too strong and you don't look after yourself. And the analogy that some people use for this, I can never decide whether I think it's brilliant or I don't like it, is the airplane thing. You're in an airplane and the masks drop. Please put your own mask on first before you help others. Maybe not first, but hey, at least don't forget about it completely. Why does all this matter from a company point of view? You know, we're some big corporate and we don't care. Actually, if I think I tend to find most people do care, actually. But there is something to this from a performance point of view, an engagement point of view. People who look after themselves, even more so people who are given permission and encouragement and space and resources and time to look after themselves, really far more engaged in the organisation they work for. They care about it. They want to help it. They believe in it. And that leads to better performance. It's not a bad thing and not something we shouldn't talk about. I think that's really important. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to invite you to just give us a few ideas before I try and get you to do a little exercise for me. You all have different ways you look after yourselves, right? You all have different things that you do. They might fit into some of those categories. Some things might tick a few boxes. I find, for example, that running, I do a little bit of running, and I find that it helps with my physical self-care, obviously. But it ticks a few more boxes for me. It ticks boxes around emotional and psychological self-care too. It's a huge difference to how I feel. But whatever these things are that you do, that you have, that are things that you use for your own self-care, I would love to have a few of them shared in the chat. What I'm going to do is see how well this works. This is my attempt to work around things for the joys of hopping in. We'll see how it works. Please share some things in the chat. What do you do? What are your ideas? Oh, I'm going to say that. Right, we've got gardening and massages from Sarah Hope. I think massages and gardening sound very separate. I wonder how you could combine them. Gardening's an outdoors thing. A few people mentioned how nature had helped them to cope. I find that really powerful. Not at the same time. Oh, I don't know. I wonder if you could do them at the same time. But yeah, there's something about being outside. There's something about being in the wider outdoors. That's something that really helps people. Lovely. Do we have a few more? Would people mind sharing a few more of the things that they do to take care of themselves? It might seem really obvious to you, but having other people say they do the same things, or having a few ideas people might come up with. Baking. Thank you, Lisa. I've been doing that with my children, and that ticks a few boxes for me as well at the same time. Wander around the local scenery. Been doing more of that. I've been doing more of that recently, John. I think it's something that I'm appreciating what's close to me a little bit more than I was. So that's really helpful. Thank you. What else do we have? Taking time out to read. I'm doing that next week. I'm taking something that's close-ish to a sabbatical, and I'm not doing much work. Actually, I'm not doing much proper work, but I'm going to spend some time reading. I think reading's a big one for me. Leslie goes to the seaside, long walks and eating bread, new places, actively doing something, not passively. I actually like this one from Jason. Making something with your hands. Lovely. It's really helpful. Just have a think. Have a think about things. And actually, I'm going to do one last one because I'm thinking about the walking. From Sarah, we've got with friends or alone. And I think both are wonderful. Different contexts, you need different things sometimes, don't you? Definitely. I can't draw a bike, Joe. It'll look terrible. There we are. Someone's out cycling. Lovely. Thank you very much for that. That was really helpful. Thank you for your generosity sharing your ideas. Okay, I think this is important. Instead, I think this is important. And I've talked to coaches and clients about it for quite a while. And I have come up with a tool that I suppose I think was brilliant. I would say that, but it is actually quite useful. I spent some time with someone back end of last year, and we were talking about levels of energy, and a metaphor kind of appeared as part of the conversation. So in my phone, right, my phone tells me what level the battery's at, but it does more than that. It has this little graph. This little graph is there, and it's there mostly to tell me off. All right, little graph says that over the past however many hours, my battery has declined from 86% to 56%. Right, it shows me how it's declined over time. Also, it tells me what's been using my battery. It says, of the battery that you've used since you last charged it, 19% of that is because you've been playing Angry Birds too much. Another 5% is because you've been checking Twitter too much. Interesting. It will also tell me a few more things. It will tell me how long it thinks my battery's going to last, based on my current usage, I think is the wording that it uses. Give me a little dotted line to describe that. Ooh, very good. What it will also do is at some point, it will switch on something called battery saver mode, and it will reduce the brightness on my screen, and it will stop checking my email every 4.5 seconds. which is probably good for me for a lot of reasons. But it's an attempt to preserve what is left. It's an attempt to mitigate the drain. It doesn't charge it. It's like, hold on until we can get to a socket, which is a bit less of a problem now than it may have been at some point in the past. But hold on, and we'll see if we can do some things that reduce the drain until you can plug in, you can charge it. Brilliant, wonderful. So this created the joys of the self-care battery meter. Now, I'd like to share this with you because I'm going to ask you all to take just 5 minutes to have a crack at it yourself. So I want to try and do this quite quickly. Let me grab the link to it. Right, I will pop this in the chat. I can find where my mouse pointer's gone. Lovely. There it is. And I will just pop it up on this mirror board again for you. So, right, here we are. Lovely. Actually press the share button, it can't, couldn't it? Right, wonderful. So, zoom in a bit. It's really simple. It's a space for the graph. Think of some time. Ask the person to think of or yourself to think of a time period that they want to consider. I've done this a lot of times starting in March, and that was a bit of a weird one to do. I've done it so many times that it's kind of lost meaning to me. And the last couple of times I've done this, I've actually thought, right, what I'm going to do is instead, I'm going to do this for September. From September, I'm going to run it to now. Lovely. So I've labelled the axes, I've decided what matters. Start of September, I was quite charged. I'd been away on holiday. I'd actually managed to get some rest and some space. I'd actually decided that September was the start of a new period, a new time. I was feeling nice and optimistic. Thought, oh, these restrictions are all starting to come off. Everything will be brilliant. And you know what? It's quite all right for a little while. Yeah, not so bad. That's kind of what was happening. A little bit of a drain, couple of weeks in, just back to the joy of work. And then this started to happen to me. Much, much steeper. I wonder what was doing that. I know. I started paying more attention to Twitter, BBC News. You know where you have that like thing that refreshes every 5 seconds on your page and a new bit of news. Looking at Twitter all day long. These really drained my battery. I wonder what else was really draining my battery. The fact it was starting to get darker. That definitely made a difference to me. And then wave 2 starting to appear. That definitely made a difference to me as well. And I think what was happening was, if I look at the projection, kind of the end of October, yeah, I think I would have been done. So about here, I tried to put my battery saver on. I restricted the times for news, social media. Actually, they came off my phone, which actually made a big difference to me. I walked in the rain. Can't write today. Wonderful. And I started to, sounds really bad, I'm saying this, help more with the kids in the morning. Getting them ready and stuff. It actually made a much nicer start to my day. And I think this put me kind of here. This is probably what happened. Made a big difference to how much my battery was drained. Something for me that really charges it. I'm just going to rush through this. Holidays, Lego, running. These are things that I know help me. And actually, in the last, I'm just going to say week, had a little bit of that around this. I had a little bit of time away, a few days, helped a bit, and I've had a little bit of a wobble again. I think I need to do more of these things. And I think I need to do less of worrying about that. Yeah, that's it. That's my thought. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this now. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to very quickly do. There's a bunch of questions that go with this. Draw your battery, fill in what drains it, charges it, reduces the drain. Battery saver is about things that mitigate the drain. And charging is about things that genuinely help you to feel restored and replenished and are probably part of your self-care routine. I think it's important to think about the difference. Sometimes the mitigations are something, the battery saver is something that is doing less of the thing that's draining your battery. Less bright screen, less frequent email checking as far as the phone is concerned. So what I would like you to do for me is I would like you all to take 5 minutes. I'd like you to take 5 minutes on your own to have a go at this. I'm going to pop that on the screen for you. You have a link to it there. If anybody is feeling particularly brave, here is a link to a Miro board. On the right hand side of it are a number of copies of this sheet, and you're welcome to, if you wish, go and fill it in live on there, being aware that other people might see it. If you do that, put your name at the top of one of the sheets and post it so people can see it. If you just want to grab a piece of paper, you just want to draw this and you just want to write a few things, please, 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 please do. Have a go. And what we'll do is we will be back at 23 past. Have a go, have a think, and just see if you can discover something about what's happened to your levels of energy over the last whatever period of time works for you. What's draining you? What could you do if you turned on battery saving mode? What would help? And also, what really charges you? Ask any questions you like in the chat if you want around this, but I'm just going to stop speaking for a few minutes until everyone's had a go at this. So, time is short. I often do this this thing as an hour and a half, 2 hour long workshop, where you actually get to spend time working with each other on these things. So I sort of give you this tool to do whatever you want with. I'm going to leave that Miro board will stay there, accessible and editable till probably sometime this afternoon or something. The links on it are there. You can get the tool itself and use it however you want. And I hope it is of some help to people. What I want to do a little bit is I just want to give you almost like a invitation to have a proper think about what your organization can do to support people. And I'm going to use in tech companies in particular, we have this sort of, a lot of places will install the football table and the bean bags, the funky sofas, and the free cans of Coke. And they'll see it as kind of looking after people. We'll do evening beers and whatnot. And I think for me, it's not what it's really about. Helping your staff to take care of yourself. I'm going to give an example of a company I visited in Bristol once. I'm not going to tell you who they are. We shouldn't have said Bristol. But I remember a television in their reception cycling through lots of things that were clearly to help maybe make you think the company was a good place. Something which was see our £1,000 bonus for referring someone for hire or something like that. There were two things that came around that were obviously well-intentioned and helping to care for their staff, but had the opposite effect. First one said, working past 7:30, make sure you order your free pizza. Ooh. Interesting. Wonder what kind of expectations that sets. And then the next one came along, said something like, working past 10, make sure you get your free taxi home. Ooh, it's very interesting indeed. Someone thinks they're doing their best to help with certain aspects of the well-being and the care of their staff. But equally, it could be interpreted very differently as setting those expectations. I think for organizations, it's about giving people permission and safety to talk about these things, giving them the opportunity to discuss things that they need, their own non-negotiables. As a line manager, I'm going to have a chat about what you need to look after yourself. What are the things that you can do that will help you? What things can we do to help give you permission to do those things? There's loads of different tools. I'm just going to show you an example of one as a starting point. This came from someone I know called Jennifer Dutton, and she's down in Manchester way. And this is in one of the trusts that she works for. Just long press the share button. Yeah. I'll just zoom out of that a tiny bit. Going home checklist on the wall. Take a moment to think about today. Acknowledge one thing that was difficult in your shift and let it go. Be proud of the care you gave today. Consider 3 things that went well. There's more to it there. It's beautiful, this. I adore this. And I've used variations of this in a few clients now. And it's amazing to give people from the top that permission that it's okay to not be okay all the time. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have to look after yourself sometimes. And I absolutely adore this one. There's another one actually, because everyone who knows me knows I love Lego. This is kind of comparable in some ways to the battery meter. This is more like a daily one. This is a fella called Paul Taylor Pitt, who works for I think he works for NHS Horizons, which is like an OD learning kind of part. And he's got a battery for the day. This is kind of comparable to maybe the MS spoons thing, if anyone knows about that. You have a certain level of things you can do, and you maybe have to choose what to do. And this is it's got a certain number of bricks. There are some things that will take away: too much coffee, rubbish sleep, challenging conversation. And there are some things that will put back: listening to a podcast, working out, catching up with a friend. I think you could take this further is, maybe this would work better if we were in the office. I want to have one of these on my desk. I want people to see it. And I want people to know that actually right now is probably not a good time to have a challenging conversation with me. Maybe they should offer to take me for a walk for 15 minutes. Or actually, maybe my levels of well-being and resilience are quite high. So now might be the time to ask me for something or ask me for help. I adore this. I think this is lovely. What I want you to do is I'm going to invite you to do this afterwards because of time. I want you to have a think about your organisation that you work in, and I would like you to answer these 3 questions around self-care. What did you learn about self-care? What did you discover about self-care? What are you taking away from today? So what? What does that really mean? What's the nugget of truth that hides behind that? What's the real relevance to you in the place that you work in? And now what? What are you going to do? Personally or professionally, or both? It's a little bit different. What? So what? And now what? I'll just invite you to do that. And that's the bit I'm going to leave you with. Self-care is not selfish. Yeah, that's it. I've actually done the time. I don't know if I get kicked out of this in a minute's time, but I hope you've all taken something from this. I'm happy to hang around for a few minutes. If there are any questions, anyone wants to pop in the chat. And you know, if you know me, say hello at some point. If you don't, get in touch. Find me on LinkedIn or Twitter or something and connect and say hello.